Hey, and welcome to another drop-in event, water cooler. We've gone live, and I've gone live with Paul. Paul Deach is in the house straight away. That's great. Um, and we are. If you want to join us, the link should be in Facebook, Managers Who Lead, and also in LinkedIn. So anyone that wants to join, just drop a note. Let us. More than welcome to have you here. It was great last week to have somebody that was net new, just new in my network, and coming in from Nigeria. And I guess that's one of the reasons I do this. Is just it's a place to just show up and connect. You know, really connect, have a chat. We don't know where it's going to go, but Paul's with me, and he's a regular. So I'm sure we're gonna have a stimulating chat. But Paul, how's your week been?
Oh, Steve, so good to see you. And yeah, I'm grateful. I can't complain. It's been a really interesting, I would say, like past month for me in terms of like resetting and getting back on track. And it was really interesting. I was thinking about this, and this is like one of the reasons why I wanted to hop on. I was watching a podcast a few days ago, and one of the messages that it was talking about is it's so important to not allow the facts to become your truth. And I was thinking
Mm,
about that, and I was like, well, there's so much depth in that because as long as like people are here, you have the ability to kind of like rewrite your story, right? So
mm,
it was just really interesting to think about how there's so many people who look at like where they are and they see it as like the end all be all,
mm,
when, as you and I've talked about before, I think that for a lot of people like the whole journey is about becoming,
mm,
right? And that was kind of the message that I took from it, is that you have the opportunity to allow your to create your own truth. Like you don't have to allow like the facts or where you are now to kind of dictate that. So yeah.
yeah, that's interesting because we when you said it, it just seemed my logical brain said, well, a fact is true. Um, but I think as you expanded on that, the term becoming, I wrote down facts becoming your truth, and it's the becoming part, which is the journey that you just highlighted. And because your current circumstance, you've got inputs. Inputs tell you where you are. You know, you're standing up, you're sitting down, you're facing east, you're facing west. Those are inputs that tell you where you are. And they have to be registered as true in a sense before you can act on them. Um, so, yeah, I guess there is an element of the inputs don't necessarily have to determine where you end up. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, or I mean like, so the example that I could kind of give, right? Like when I first started on LinkedIn, I didn't have like any testimonials, right? So it's like
Mm,
the fact at the time would have been like, oh, he's had no testimonials, right? Like how is he gonna, but the truth was that I was my own testimonial, if that makes sense. Like
yes, it
the
does.
the and I think that's where, even when you dive into a lot of like neurological stuff and you learn that one of the reasons why like visualization and imagination is so important is that your brain and your mind like can't distinguish between what's real and imagination type of
Hmm.
thing. So I think like that's kind of part of it as well, is just being able to kind of not only rewire it but having the ability to see things from a different perspective. Like there was a movie that came out on Amazon a few days last week, I think. It was called the Map That Leads to You, and it's like a
Oh,
it, it's like a romance, like a drama thing,
yeah.
but there's a deeper message in it. And what really kind of stood out to me was one of the things for me, like personally, is I just don't connect to a lot of the vanity of things. Like when I would travel and I'd go to these retreats and stuff, for me, it was always about learning and like what could I take to share and like help
Mhm.
other people advance. But there were a lot of people who would get caught up in, oh my gosh, like look at the view and all these different things. And it could have been because I was born and raised in Hawaii, which is like one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I'm
That
like,
yeah, that
uh,
taints you a little bit.
well, like yeah, I mean, I'm like that's beautiful, but I mean, like, I mean, my if I just walked like right outside my door for like 25 years, I saw the most beautiful mountain range. Like I didn't even need to like really do anything. So
Yeah.
it's like that was really eye-opening, but it what was really kind of interesting is, you know, when it comes to movies and like anything in general, right? People are so like critical, they have their own opinions and all these different things. Well, when I was listening to like the a lot of people who watched it and commented on the movie, they were like, "Oh, this is terrible," and they're focusing on all the pieces instead of like the big picture
Picture.
about being present. But there was a scene in the movie where the one of the main characters said exactly what I just said about how like the this is not the whole point of like coming to places like this, you know, where you take a picture and you go live. Like it's about like being present and being in the moment.
Mm.
And then one of the characters said, well, if you think about it, we're all really like experiencing and trying to connect to life from what we're experiencing and the way that we view it.
Yes.
And that's kind of like the beauty in things, is that people can view things differently. So what it kind of taught me, kind of like my own reality check for myself, is that, oh, right, like, yeah, it's true. Because if for a lot of people, like if that's what brings them joy and fulfillment is, you know, sharing on social media, like all that stuff, even though it doesn't align with me,
Mhm.
there's people there and out in the world, probably lots of people who connect on that level. And
Mm.
it was just a deeper form of connection to me that was really, really eye opening.
Yeah, that's interesting. And well, I'll take a break there. Prince, welcome. All the way from Nigeria. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks,
You,
Steve.
you can hear us
Good
okay?
to see you too.
Good, good, good. We're again, it's just a water cooler. So we were just chatting about actually Paul brought up a really interesting point about facts becoming our truth. And we were just kind of waxing around that topic. And I guess that's something that, like you said, Paul, you've been sort of thinking through this last few weeks or month or so. Um, and I get, is there have you come to a conclusion? Is there some outcome from your wanderings or your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I mean, I
You,
would say like, oh wait, are you talking to me or are you talking to Prince
Oh no,
Ro?
I was talking to you, Paul,
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
yeah,
Let Prince Ro.
yeah, Prince, yeah, come in,
oh,
you had
no,
something to say.
I was thinking you were talking to me. That was why I wanted to speak. So you can go on, Paul.
Oh, oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
So so I would say like the biggest thing that I kind of learned from the past month is that alignment is so important. And I feel like being in the professional training and coaching space, most people kind of teach you how to be like them, wherein it's really about, the way that I view it from my perspective, it's really about teaching people not only how to think for themselves, but trust themselves, because that's really the only place where you're going to reach alignment, is
Mm,
when you're doing things for you. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had over the past month was really kind of just a sense of being free. I think going back to that movie, that was like the overall connection of it, was just like how free and how um aligned people were, you
mm,
know, like even regardless of if people think that it's wrong or whatever, like they were in alignment for them. And I think for a lot of people, especially when you're on social media and all these different things, that's why a lot of people are out of alignment, and why you you'll meet people, because Steve, I'm sure you've had this experience before where it's like you see people on like LinkedIn or all these platforms, and then like you go meet them in person and it's like, wait, what the heck? Like they're like two completely different people. And that became kind of one of the common questions. I joked and said it was my $1 million question when I would have coffee chats with people. And I would always ask them, like, why is the person that I'm meeting privately so different from the person publicly? And that's when they would always tell me, like, oh, well, it's either like some coach or some other person told them, like, you have to show up how you want people to see you. And that's when I said, like, I think it's important to show up as who you are, because when you show up as who you are, and even if you're on that journey of becoming, that's what makes people, that's what connects, is like
Yeah.
that human connection and the vulnerability, and ultimately kind of just living your message and lifestyle. And I would say this year, more than the past like 4 or 5 years, I was so out of alignment for majority of the year
Yeah.
that that was kind of like one of the big things for me the past month, has been getting back in alignment, and um doing the things just because I love doing it. I'm not attached to an outcome or all these different things. Like just learning to love the process.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been fun.
That's good. You really struck a chord with me when you just said that about, yeah, this people have their personas, and whether they've been coached that way or whether they perceive that they have to present themselves in a particular way in one format, and that is different to where they are in person. Sure, I'm in my home office. I have lighting, and I have a nice camera, and I've got a microphone. So if you met me at a coffee shop, I wouldn't have these things around me. But that's notwithstanding, it, it's I like to think that I show up enough online that I'm consistent. If you saw me in person, we would be having this just without the actually, it'd be nicer because we wouldn't have microphones and headsets in between us. We get a good hug in there or somewhere, and and share stories. So yeah, it is important that we don't get caught up in the mirage of looking like something that um we perceive others to want us to look like. And also, I think there's value in taking people on the journey. There's value in people seeing you in a um, in a real, or even sometimes a raw state. Um, that also carries its own kind of caveats as well, because in terms of sort of privacy, integrity, and not trying to sort of make your story into a drama. I think there's an element of respecting a boundary, um, with regards to how real people want to show up online. Sometimes they buy into the drama of that story as opposed to, and that then becomes a bit of a veneer as well, because everyone's sort of saying, oh, I'm, the rags to riches. I'm down on my last dime, and all that sort of dramatic elements to things. But the point is that joining someone on the journey, rather than sort of making this mirage of a destination. I think that's valuable to for people to kind of be involved in. And also it requires a level of vulnerability and um and like you said, trusting yourself in order to show up that way, and not be about the looks or the vanity metrics, in that space. And it applies. I mean, we see it in sort of professional services, coaching spaces, because we are addressing more of the person than a role or a skill, if you like. If I was teaching someone how to pass a Microsoft certification exam, I wouldn't necessarily go into the holistic side of that engineer. We're just trying to get through the exam, So similarly, if you're in accountancy or engineering, there's things that you'll just do to get them done. But when you're interfacing with people on a personal level, and if you like, introducing those softer skills, which is how they show up for themselves, how they show up for others, how they influence, how they emotionally regulate, how they manage their state. All of those things tend to have obviously a much more holistic viewpoint to them, and you work in one area and it impacts lots of other areas. So it's important to be real in that space, and not be caught up with like I said, either the vanity elements or the vanity metrics. And then, like I said, leaning into your truth. I will look at that. I'll check out that movie, The Map That Leads to You. You said,
Yeah, it was. And Steve, I think like to your point, because I think what's so funny is a lot of people know that I'm like in my 20s and stuff, but I don't actually like social media like personally. Like if I wasn't an entrepreneur, I probably wouldn't be on it because I don't like the narrative that it writes for a lot of people, because a lot of the stuff that you see isn't really real. But I remember a conversation that I had with my mentor because I was upset, I was annoyed, and I was just like, I don't like this. And she's like, well, you can do one of two things. She's like, you can either complain about it or you can go do it differently. And I think for me, when I look at it, I almost kind of look at it as like putting the real back in reality. And when I created kind of I guess it started out as like a show that became a brand, but really like the entire time it's always kind of been a lifestyle for me of impossible equals impossible. What was the best way that it grew and I was able to build it was when people actually watched me live the message. They saw me hit the reset button and be in quote unquote an impossible situation and then turn it into impossible. And I think going back to why I even created the show, it was really to inspire people to focus on their potential instead of accepting their reality, kind of going back to that whole saying of like not allowing the facts to become your truth. Like, yes, you could be down and out now. Yes, you could be whatever it is, insert whatever you want, but that doesn't have to be your story, right? And
or define you.
Right, and just show people. I feel like the power of possibility is such an interesting thing. And Steve, I don't know if you felt the same way, but when I was younger, I always looked at things of like, oh, if I can do it, like, everybody should do it, or it's like if I can do it, anybody can do it. But what I've learned is that the power of possibility comes to just show people what's possible. It's not saying like, hey, because I did this that you have to do it, or that but it's just like showing people like, hey, if you want a better situation, a better circumstance, or whatever it is, because there's always going to be somebody who has it worse than you. And I think for me, that's why I've really loved mentorship. And you and I've talked about this before, how the most profound life lesson that I've learned is that there's always going to be someone who's ahead and behind of you. So it's important to not only reach up to grow, but also reach back to teach. And that's been kind of like a really profound thing for me, because it's like, no matter what room I step in, or like, what generation or gender or ethnicity or like all these different things, there's always going to be somebody who is been doing it longer, more accomplished. But then in that same aspect, there's also going to be somebody who has like no idea what they're doing. Right. And I think so many people just get so caught up on the reaching up to grow part that the bigger accelerator is actually when you reach back to teach. Because when you want to get into those, higher circles and around more affluent people, service is like a crucial thing. And that's why like my mentor always would tell me, she's like, your money may get you into the room, but your character and your work ethic will keep you here. And I've watched her like kick people out, turn down like people who've offered her like crazy amounts of money. So I think
Yeah.
that was kind
Character.
of part of it. Yeah, was a lot of it too. And I mean, we all make mistakes. Like the whole ownership and accountability thing is important as well. But that's kind of like one of the things that I realized, and a lot of, I got a lot of feedback from a lot of mentors and really close people, and they were just like, you are not in alignment. Like what's going on here? And
Yeah.
I think that for me was the eye opener. Was you'll get a lot of people that give you that feedback, but you really don't become aware of it until the point where you can actually take the first step to change, until you realize that for yourself. And that's where it's like going back to teaching people how to think and trust for themselves, because I feel like people know the things that they need to be doing. I don't know if you feel this way, Steve, but like people know the things that they should be doing and they don't do it, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's because they don't trust themselves, whether it's because they're afraid, all these, you can insert like all these different things. But I really do think that that's the core of why people don't achieve their dreams and goals, is that there's like a disconnect between knowing and doing.
Yeah. There's a lot in there.
Principal, you're back now? So you may have had some connection issues. Are you good? Are you good there?
Yeah, I had some power outage, so I had to on my backup
Oh,
mic to
okay.
come back.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's sometimes parts of the world you get these issues. But I just wanted to welcome you again. This is second week. You joined us for the first time last week. So how was your week been? I mean, we've been talking about some other stuff, and you can tie in whatever you've heard or whatever other insights you have. But how's your week been?
Yeah, my week has been great. Making more research, learning and learning from people. That's basically the kind of person I am. Learning, always learning, and also passing my knowledge to people I know and people
Yeah.
around me. Yeah, so my week has been great and blessed.
Fantastic. So that what Paul was saying about reaching up to grow and reaching back to teach, you've had some examples of that.
Yeah, yeah, I have
That's
a
fantastic.
lot. Like this week, I had a brother that is in a support role in Asia Pro that supports agents with CRM, like JShell. He's a JShell support agent. So has received a call several times asking me on guidance on how he can navigate this and that and that. And I was blessed helping him and assisting him get
Fantastic.
what he needed. It was, yeah.
So that's your area of expertise in UI UX work. You work with
Yeah,
GHL.
I do UI UX. Yeah, I work with JShell. I do UI UX graphic design and JShell also. I'm a systems engineer.
Fantastic.
Build workflows, websites, and all of that.
Cool. Well, how is you're in Nigeria? How is business there? How is the sort of the temperature for technology, and how are things looking in your world there?
Okay, yeah, everything here is pretty calm. Basically, I am using Starlink and all of that to work and all of that. So basically, everything is calm here. It's just normal temperature.
Okay.
You have to deal with all of it yourself.
So you're on
Yeah,
Starlink down there. Okay, that's good.
yeah. That's like the only network you can use. Like stable here. If you're using any other network here, you're going to be having. It's going to be fluctuating. You're going to be going back and
Yeah.
forth. So I think that's the best network here to
Okay.
use.
Okay. So that's where Musk is making his money down on the continent. Huh? it
Exactly.
it's fun. It's funny as I say that. It was because there was I think Microsoft and Gates decades ago talked about LOS, low orbiting satellites, to offer that kind of satellite internet or data coverage around the world. And that LOS, I have to look it up, but it's got to be at least a decade and a half, maybe even longer. I remember people talking about that. So it's great to see the technology come to fruition, and in a space where I was in Lagos 96 for a seminar. Actually conducted it with a coach. Actually, it was his seminar, and I organized the event and traveled with him. And it was interesting because it was a common occurrence to have brownouts and outages, especially in the evening. People coming home from work, everything gets turned on, and having that power outage thing there. So I can see that pain point. And then the other thing is that I was surprised at the lack of technology around solar. Do you have solar where you are, Princewell?
No, right now I'm not using solar, but I'm planning on getting one.
Is it common? Is it popular? Is it something that people lean into as a?
Yeah, it's popular here because most of the time you have some power outage. So the only way to survive here is if you're having a project or a work, the only way to survive without having back and forth power outage is solar. That's the best here.
Yeah, right.
So it's very popular
Okay.
for a lot of people working in it.
Yeah, because that was something that the sun's hot there. same in the Caribbean. My mum got solar last year at her place. So, and it's interesting. She's like water independent. She has her own sort of water tank reservoir, and she's somewhat power independent because she has solar there, and then she uses gas. She uses gas, large gas canisters for cooking. So it's interesting that because it's hard to get utilities to the last mile, it's a tough terrain. The infrastructure isn't what it is, what you'd imagine maybe in a first world, in terms of, especially to rural places. If you're in a nice spot of the island, then the chances are there's going to be a struggle to get you utilities. So it's interesting, all these things are coming to an individual. People are being self-sufficient in their own space, and I guess the parallel is that we have to, just like we have to kind of create our environment to be independent of the facts. If the grid is out, you need to be able to provide power. We have to trust ourselves too. We have to be sort of independent of the facts around us and have our own truth. So I'm making a very weak connection between autonomy of your house to autonomy of the person. Right? If things around you are not if things around you are not or less than ideal, let's say, that doesn't have to be your truth. And similarly, if things around your house are less than ideal, that doesn't have to be your truth either. There are ways to mitigate against it. So, but I do like what you said, Paul, about possibility, and if it's possible, then if I can do it, then other people can do it. I wrote down sort of possible is not equal to probable. Just because something is possible, it doesn't necessarily make it probable to happen or probable for someone to do, or even they have the desire to. If I can ride 10 miles on my bike, then anyone can ride 10 miles on a bike. Maybe not. It's not probable for them to do it, or they're not, or capable even. So there's elements there that tie in, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I think, like, going back to what you were saying too, the thing that I learned is that it might not even be worth it for people. Going back to like my whole question this year of figuring out like what is worth it, right? Because usually what a lot of people find is what was worth it then usually isn't worth it now.
Mm.
And that's like another thing that I've one of like my favorite phrases that I've used over the past like couple years is telling people like to give up what is not yours. Like so often people are like conditioned that like quitting and giving up is like a bad thing, but it's like I see so many people who are miserable because they're living out like other people's dreams or like doing stuff, you know, because it's like, oh, I don't want to quit. I don't want to do this or that. But it's like, it's important to give up what is not yours, because that's why so many people who have like all the, from what it looks, right? Like it looks like they have everything that they want, but how it feels is not, you know, what's a really interesting metaphor, Steve, because I grew up in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Before I left, like the final 3 months, I started really like going hiking. I mean, I would see like all the landscape and all the nature stuff, but I never really like would go hiking until I knew that I probably was going to leave and not come back for a while. And what's so interesting, kind of going back to that idea of impossible equals impossible, like when I would look at the summit of like a lot of these trails and hikes, the last one that I did in Hawaii, they kind of nicknamed it the Will Breaker, because I think like 80 to 90% of people who start don't finish. And what was so interesting is it really for me was kind of the perfect example of that's why human beings stand on top of the mountain, because a mountain has like a peak, right? Like that mountain's like peaked out, like it's not going to grow any taller. But as human beings, like you don't have a peak, you don't have like a limit, you can always expand your capacity. And what was so eye-opening was that's why the most beautiful pictures are like at the top, right, where you can see everything. But as you know, it's very different from actually being there at the top versus getting like a picture online or photoshopping it and all those different things. And the way that I kind of looked at it is that view is earned. Like you have to climb the mountain. And that's kind of just how I look at a lot of things, is you have to ask yourself like, at what cost is this going to cost, and is it a cost that you're willing to pay, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's energy, you know. It's probably all combination of all three of them. But I think that's the question that a lot of people don't really ask themselves, because I don't know if we talked about this, Steve, but I actually wrote a first draft for my book, The Greatest Detour, The University of Adversity, which is kind of like my metaphor for life. I had the first draft done and all these things, but I didn't put it out there because books are kind of like a sacred thing to me. I grew up reading books like ever since I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. And I feel like a lot of the stories and the impact and the lessons of the book are caught in the vanity of it. You know, it's like everybody just cares about being a bestseller and all the stuff. And I'm just like, for me, that was one of the things that kind of why I just didn't feel aligned, because I'm like, when I put this book out, like I don't care how many copies it sells. And I mean, I know it's going to do well just because of the impact that I've had over the years and the relationships that I've built and all those type of things. But what I feel like a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of it is relationships first. Like every book that I read, every podcast that I've watched, it's because I had a relationship with that person. You know, I got to know them, and that it's almost kind of this idea of like micro to macro, and everything's kind of like an inside out game. Whereas most people are kind of playing the opposite, like they just want to go macro, but you really don't get macro until you build those like meaningful micro connections that will be the catalyst to make it macro. So it's been
there's something that you said there in terms of welcome, Mr. Whiskey.
Thank you. And I have to say, Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study wearies the body. That's from the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's actually one of the opening lines of my book, God versus the Dominant Human Spirit. What King Solomon, we assume he wrote Ecclesiastes at the reflection point of his life, was saying was the Bible is the main book, right? But people, and he predicted this hundreds of years ago, people are going to write books again and again and again and again. They're going to regurgitate, respit. They're going to create stuff. And some of it is good stuff, right? There's plenty of self-discovery stuff out there, but it's going to stray further and further from the Bible, right? And that's what we've seen, right? There's hundreds of thousands of millions of books out there, right? And a lot of them are rinse and repeat. But the important part is being grounded in the Bible. And that's why my book starts with that, because I said, this is not a replacement of the Bible. This is a redirect to the Bible. And every page in that book has Bible quotes in it to stay grounded in the word. So to Paul's point, I think there is a lot of vanity that has taken over books. Like you said, the best-selling versus the message. And I agree 100% with that. And I just thought of it because you talked about the sacredness of books. And it's like, there are also, unfortunately, authors who move into a quantity over quality. It's like, oh, look at me, I have 20 books. Cool, but they all suck. So what does it matter, right? But Steve Wright has one book, The Water Cooler United, and it's an amazing book. It's a high quality produced book that was made with heart and soul. And all I gotta say is, you know, Prince Will, great to see you again. Last week I said to myself, Prince will join us next week, and here you are. So
Amen. Amen. I was
It's great to see you, Whiskey.
I was gonna speak to and actually there's enough of us in the room here just to go around the room. The metaphor you're talking about, Paul, about getting to a mountain peak and seeing the view, and sometimes people's impression is that they can just take a picture of it because it's such a great view. But the person actually there at the top experiencing the view earned it. They made it there. And that so resonated with me. My earned view story was that we were my family and I were doing a road trip from San Diego to San Antonio, Texas, and I ended up losing the car key. Lost the car key. Delayed by 3 days, just trying to sort this out. It was over the July 4th weekend, so a lot of
senior moment,
all stuff. So we detoured and we ended up not going to where we were going to, and we took a road trip, and the road trip took us around back, and we went to the Grand Canyon, and it was, the girls knew, we knew we were going there, so there was anticipation, but I didn't know what to expect. I've seen pictures of the place, and so I knew I was there when I knew what I was expecting to see, because I've seen photographs of the Grand Canyon. But when you pull up into the park itself and come out your car and you walk to the edge of this thing, it was I teared up, because I just my head couldn't work out how big this thing was, how deep and wide and magnificent. And
what my ex-girlfriend said, Steve, I'm sorry, I gotta interrupt to say. No, but did you do the glass bridge? Did they have that when you went?
No. When was this?
I don't know if they still do it. I know they had a glass bridge that
where you can step over.
Stand like right in the middle of the canyon. Now, knowing you, they probably said, this guy's a skydiver. We can't let him, on a glass bridge. Otherwise, he might try to jump down and,
You need a parachute to skydive, bro. But the point was that we took the standard selfies and things to kind of document that we were there. But I can't share those photographs because really they're not representative of the place. We earned
screen share right now, Steve, and show us actually.
No, that's why we earned the view because we went there, and sometimes people can sometimes think it's enough to get somebody else's second-hand experience, and without necessarily going through that journey to earn it, at whatever level. So that's very important. But anyone else got stories of?
I was gonna say social media has definitely amplified that a lot as well. But I think with social media too, to try to keep this mountain analogy going, is you'll see a lot of people who Photoshop themselves onto the top of the mountain, and then you're gonna try to hike that mountain. So I'll bring up. I did a couple episodes recently about, and maybe I brought it up here on the last Wednesday or something, about some of the guys I admired online. I found out were taking a bunch of steroids, right? And so I've done some content recently about that. About we've got young men and women chasing these standards that were set by men who are steroids, women who are on, I won't name brand drop, but they're injecting themselves in the stomach to lose weight, or they're getting plastic surgery or photoshopping. And I think to the point is, you have a lot of people now trying to hike these mountains that are impossible to hike because they were never real mountains in the first place. They were just fake Photoshop mountains. And it's like, yeah, it's just it's a shame, every 10 to 15 years, they say about the beauty standards change, the fashion standards change. You look at flapper girls in the 1920s compared to what is valued now, very different beauty standards, so to speak. But it's just a shame, because I do a lot of work in children's suicide prevention and self-harm, and a major cause behind it is self-esteem, especially for women between the ages, girls 10 years old and 18 years old. The amount of 10-year-olds who take their life, it's unsettling. And a lot of it is just on the female side is self-esteem, 10 to 18. And then when you flip to 18 to 25, which is still considered children in suicide statistics, it flips to men. And it's not self-harm, it's completed suicides, right? So women have a lot more attempts in self-harm, but men have more completed suicides. And you look at the age divide, and it's like, for men, it's lifehood responsibilities. From 18 to 25, it's becoming a man, being on your own, right? And I've mentioned before, how the young women have a lot more support. They're going to college, and their parents are maybe helping them pay or paying. They're living with their parents. They have a lot of support, whereas a lot of men is kind of like kicked to the curb. That's not always the case, but with the 10 to 18-year-old range, it's a lot of self-esteem. And I talked about how back in the day, when Steve was a child, for example, the young women, all they had to compare themselves with was maybe the other girls at the school, right? But they were all real women. You didn't have women in the high school who had plastic surgery or whatever it was, right? Maybe the prettiest girl was a cheerleader. Steve had a crush on her, could never ask her out to prom, right? That kind of thing. Now you have women comparing themselves, young girls who are 10 to 14 to 18. Now they're going online, and they're comparing themselves to women and girls who aren't just regular high school girls with them. They're seeing these plastic surgeries in Miami, Florida. They're seeing these Photoshop pictures that people are using AI now to tweak photos even more so than Photoshop, lighten my skin up, clear out my acne, make my chest bigger, make my butt rounder, right? All this stuff. And it's like setting an unrealistic standard. And society has kind of accepted that standard. And so it's like I said, I've talked before, the beauty standard changed from, are you a pretty woman, to how sexually satisfactory are you, so to speak, if that makes sense. It's shifted away from like fashion and beauty to just how sexualized are you, right? It's been from, oh, wow, you wore a pretty dress, to, wow, you're basically naked. It's like the fashion standards have changed to less and less clothing. It's changed to more and more sexualized, where it's like, as a man, your value is how long is your manhood. As a woman, how busty are you? It's not even about being good looking anymore. It's like, are you tall, and do you have lengthy manhood, and are you slim, thick, not too thick, but not too slim? And if so, how good is your sex game? Like, I feel like that's what the beauty standards have become, is just like all sex driven.
How does it? And that's
just my perspective from what I've seen on social media and a lot of the culture.
I want to catch some of Principal's experience from that. I know a little bit. from
Well,
my
and this is
time.
mainly America, I will say. I'm not
Yes,
sure
yeah.
about Britain or other countries.
Yeah, and I've seen some of my time in Jamaica. The shift from a more sort of familial cultural collective to people looking outside of their groups for those vanity metrics. You know, sometimes you get things that are sort of culturally funny. I mean, my mom loves Nollywood. She loves Nigerian dramas, right? Which almost kind of they almost smack of the sort of the Mexican Spanish novella type drama. There's always a story that you can pretty much catch within the first 10 minutes, and then you're looking, the rest of the movie is really about how somebody tried to make it right, or somebody tried to get them back, or
Like soap
so
operas.
they're highly entertaining, and I mean the production value is different. They're not your blockbuster AI filled CGI movies. They're much more simply shot, almost like a stage type thing, but they're engaging. So just from where Princeville is in Nigeria, what is the themes or the trends that you see within social media, sort of either in your peers or sort of around you in your community?
Yeah, Mr. Whiskey has already said it. In a lot of in Nigeria, it's just like a basic thing that happens every day.
Can
You
you
see a lot
turn
of
your
people
mic up?
posting.
We're a little bit quiet, or get closer to it.
Can you hear me better
Oh, that's better now. Yeah.
now? Yeah, so just like Mr. Whiskey does in Nigeria, it's just like a normal. You see a lot of people posting pictures about their life, but it's not about them. And it's mislead a lot of young ones that are coming up. They want to be like them. They want to, meanwhile, they don't know what the person is doing home. You know, they just see something on social media and they feel like this is the kind of person I want to be like. But what they are saying, it's not even the real person of what the person posted. So that's
Yeah.
just the thing. So it mislead a lot of young ones and a lot of things. So basically, while I was even growing up, we saw a lot of people doing well that we wanted to be like, was motivating us and all of that. But meanwhile, if you look deep into what they are doing, it's not legal. It's either they're doing something wrong or something bad to get to where they are at the moment. So it's a lot of things. Most time we just wish to be like somebody we cannot do what they are doing. To be like, you get. There was a time I was, while I started tech, I was coming up learning systems engineering and a lot of that. I was seeing a lot of people so different that even the person that was teaching me was comparing me with them. So I was so scared of doing a lot of things. I was hiding in my shell instead of showing what I can do. Even what I can do, I was afraid to do because they might criticize me or say this guy's only better than yours or this guy. So it affected me in a lot of ways. So after taking a while back, I even had to I almost gave up in tech. I was like, this is not for me. They are better than me, and I cannot do it. All those kind of things. So I stepped back a while and start reflecting on my life and what to do, what can I do, what's the next step to move forward in my life, and all of that. So I just started making my own research and go deep into it. Before I know, I became good and started coming out of my shell and face my fear and all of that. So it's basically what can motivate you, but what can keep your fire burning inside of you? You have to find what you're good at, chase it with all you can. It's not like you can do what they are doing, but can you do what they did to get to where they are? It's just your stamina, your strength, and what you can go with. That's just basically it. And a lot of youth copy a lot of people they cannot do what they are doing, and it's bad for them because at the end of the day they give up or they end up in the wrong track. So that's it.
Yeah. There's a lot in there in terms of like the fake, that the whole the airbrush or the artificial mountain that people are sitting on top of, and pretending that they climbed it, and then you look at them thinking, "Oh, I can do that too," and it's not even a probability; it's an impossibility because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And when you talked about influence, influencers,
Yeah, the steroids. I mean, it's become such a big issue. Um, it's because like as much as I talked about the young women feel like they can't keep up, I feel like the men are chasing these guys' physiques. They're huge, they're jacked, and they're like, just do what I do. Just follow this diet, just follow this workout, and you'll look like me. And young men are doing it and not getting the same results because these people are on steroids. And it's really not fair because so many young men are developing body dysmorphia, both men and women. And it's like it's just such a shame to really they're really negatively affecting people because I know like it's really frustrating when you're seeing these guys who are jacked and you're doing what they're doing and telling you to do, and you're not getting the same results. So then you blame yourself. Like, what am I not doing? Am I not training hard enough? And you just grow to like hate yourself and your body. And meanwhile, this guy's on steroids the whole time. And it's like, it's really just like people don't think about the long-term effects of the mental health of the youth, of
Yeah.
children, and it's a shame. And Steve, something that I want to bring up just because I know it's something that you would enjoy is the racial side of the conversation, which is it's turned into also like fetishizing, sexualizing races, right? So at least here in America, it's like Latinas, Asian women, and Black women have become very sexualized, and it's kind of become where certain women will just turn their race into like a sexual attraction or a money piece. And it's a shame. Like, I don't know if you follow like Black female rappers, but a lot of them, like, I can't even watch their stuff because it's so crude. And like, a lot of it is just putting forward for like, hey, as a Black woman, like, twerk, dressing modestly, talk about stuff. Like, if you actually look at some of the rap lyrics of some of those songs, like, Sexy Red, Glorilla, this is all this stuff. Like, I've looked at some of their stuff, not for the sake of enjoyment, but I don't even want to repeat the lyrics here on LinkedIn, right? But if
Thanks.
you just look up the lyrics and read them, it's like, this is what we're putting forward to our children, and this is what we're showing Black women as the idols, rather than like, hey, here's a Black woman who went to university and is making great waves in the science industry or whatever. I feel like the people we've really put up on pedestals, and I think we talked last time about we live in a day and age of celebrities and like
Halo effect.
celebritization, and it's like we're looking at who we're putting up. I mean, it's like, if this is who we want our kids to look up to, then that's who they're going to be, right? So why do we have all sexualized women saying sexualizing yourself is empowerment, leading communities specifically in different in different races, And like, I think, I went to Japan and everything, and like going to Japan and actually being there and then comparing it to what I see on social media, what a big difference. Going to Japan, what a beautiful culture. Like, it was a great time. But if you're a young man and you go online, you know what it is? It's the same like Tokyo burlesque show, just put out all over. Like, the whole idea, and I am having a comedy skit about this. It's like in my comedy skit, basically the idea is like, as a young man, it's hard to say like you went to Japan because like all the guys are like, hey, and it's like it really is so sexualized online. Like, Japan has just become like a how do I say this, like, like this whole spot. Like, and I do blame, like I said, if you go on social media, like if I look up Japan, at least as a young man, the algorithm just pushes forwards these Tokyo strip clubs, all these spots. But when I went to Japan, you know what it was? It was rural mountain hiking. It was quiet living. It was food. Like, there's so much culture to it, but all we're seeing online is the burlesque side of the culture, the attract young men and money culture. Same thing if I look at Black culture. There's so much to Black culture from many different parts of the world. But what I'm seeing online is the Atlanta side of the culture, is the Black rap woman side of the culture, and it's like. And then with the whole like Hispanic culture, there's so much to that culture, so many different types of Hispanic and Latino. But, as a young man, if I look online, you know what I see? oh, I'm a thick, fertile Latina with childbearing hips. Like that's all that gets put forward. I have a feisty attitude, and I'm the slightly toxic partner, but like I'm really good at this and that. Like
Mm.
I feel like a lot of cultures have been pinpointed into this sexualized box. And it's like those cultures have so much more to offer. And it's a shame that both people, both white people and those cultures have kind of set up these people on pedestals just because it makes the most money or it, attracts the most young men.
Mm.
I don't know how it is in Britain or if you keep up with American
It's
stuff,
the
if you know
it's
any of these
it,
rappers.
it's the same. I mean, there's I'm not necessarily in those circles, but and I don't my music listening isn't sort of the most culturally the most currently popular. So I mean, like I wouldn't know
You got to share
many
your
of the
genre now, Steve. You can't
many of
hide
the
it.
rappers. Yeah,
You got to share what you listen to.
I'm still stuck in the 80s. Sorry. but all that to say, there's a couple of things that come out of that in terms of that whole celebrity thing, that the social media setting up false narratives. It almost comes full circle to when Paul and I was when we started the call, and he started by he mentioned facts. Facts don't have to be your truth, and there's an element of becoming, that where you are doesn't have to dictate where you end up or where you decide to go. And unfortunately, we find ourselves surrounded by things that are false north stars. They are false things that we could be striving towards. And now the work that we have to do is discerning what is real before we set our course towards it. Because you
And
could
that's
be
easy for us to say, Steve, because we're like grown adults. But what about a young person who's had a tablet since they were 2 years old, and all they've ever seen is Sexy Red? They've never met, people like us who speak the truth. Like how do we get the youth to navigate the truth if they've only been raised in lies or fictional tales? And
Yeah.
that comes. And I'd like to say, well, that's the responsibility of us parents. But if I assumed all parents were responsible, that would be irresponsible of me.
Right. Well, one answer, one statement of comment we shared was the as a owning our truth. And we say trust. It's easy to say trust yourself, and do things for you. But to your point, if you're being influenced or informed by things that are not necessarily either wholesome or true, then you're setting your own truth is going to be skewed. You have the dysmorphia in terms of your thinking, so
Yeah.
that's tough. But there's another thing we talked about as well, in terms of we look up to people in our circle in order to grow, and we look back at people in our circle in order to teach. And that can only happen when you put yourself in a position to really familiarize yourself with people who you can go to for growth, and also familiarize yourself with the people in your circle that could look to you to teach. I mean, one of my roles is actually educating primary schoolers in computing skills. So I show up in a classroom, and it is startling how much technology is available to children of that age. And they're sponges for that. They're sponges for that stuff. It's bright, it's loud, it's colorful, it's got all of the elements. And we've done decades of psychology to put these elements into technology to make them attractive. And adultizing children, we're bringing the assumed responsibility and the awareness further and further down. A 3-year-old, to your point, Mr. Whiskey, a 3-year-old with a tablet could have a meltdown in public because this device is either not connected to Wi-Fi or it doesn't have something on there. and you'd see families scrambling around this child to placate them because this tablet or the phone or the electronic device that they're on malfunctioned.
Well, and all this stuff that they're on is supposed to be age verified, age required, right? Like, again, social media is supposed to be, I think, in some places 16 plus, in some places 18 plus, yet those aren't regulated at all. And to your point, I think there are people like you and I and certain influencers who are truth sayers and wellness warriors and all that, but they never get the spotlight to the same degree. You know, for every one Steve Wright there is, an amazing guy, there's 100 Sexy Reds, you know, so to speak. I don't mean to dog on Sexy Red. That's just the example that
Not to
came to
look,
mind.
not to look them up now.
No, Steve,
No,
make sure you're
don't.
not in the classroom when you do that. You'll get fired. Yeah, please read the lyrics. Just because it's just shocking, you know, and it's promoting terrible stuff. I mean, just popping Plan Bs, you know, and which you're not supposed to take, and most types of them you're not supposed to take more than once a year. And they're like, just take it every time you have sex, and just have sex with all these different guys, and it's okay. Like, some of the stuff they say, it's just, again, it's just crazy, and it's sad to me, you know, because, like, thinking we were celebrating Jamaican Independence Day the other day on here, and it's like that's a part of Black culture that you're not seeing. Again, what you're seeing is, like, quote, they put forward a lot of the hood and gang culture. You know, I was watching Black commentators the other day talk about, like, how stupid it is that these young kids are wanting to shoot guns and live this street life, and it's counteractive to all the Black people who have fought against those stereotypes and those labels in that culture. Yet you have people, because, like, I'll give an example. My one best friend, she's Black, and she grew up in a very gated community, very educated, and lived a very, quote, as she calls it, a white life. And her brother said, "We are fake Blacks," and he went and got arrested, got all tattoos, started doing crimes to, quote, feel Black. And you know, she resents him for that, because he gave up and threw away what hundreds of Black people living in you know, lower income communities would love to have, the life that he had, going to private school, going, you know, growing up in a gated community. But, quote, he felt like he wasn't a real Black if he wasn't in the streets. And to me, it's just really sad that people put forward, you know, that lifestyle. And you know, I don't think there's really a white equivalent, because country music doesn't tell you to be white trash, in my opinion. It sometimes glorifies, you know, white trash living, but not to the same degree, I think, as Black culture. I mean, some country music will be like, yeah, go get the shotgun and chew dip and shoot and drink beer and stuff, but not to the degree that we see it in the Black culture. And to me, it's just, like, so sad that you have these celebrities, quote, who represent, quote, all of Black culture, and it's this crazy mainstream depiction that is just regressing the society, or keeping them stuck.
So we've got representation from Europe. We got Caribbean Black. We got African Black. We got East Coast, West Coast.
I'm considered an honorary Black in a lot of communities.
U.S. heritage here. So these are things. To again, Paul brought up a point. I think his mentor was saying that, you know, stuff happens. You know, what you can either complain about it, or you can do something. You can do something about it.
I need to become a rapper who makes music about being like a Black professor. Like, do you think that would counteract all of that side of it?
I don't know. I think
you'll have to sing it, Steve. I can't. I don't have the requirements to. I can write the lyrics. You can sing it.
I think part of it is not to give up creating spaces that are refuge for people looking for those safer spaces. So, you know, it's that whole starfish metaphor. You know, there's 1,000 of them on the beach, and you throw one back into the ocean, and you go, well, what's it matter? Well, it matters to that starfish that you threw back into the ocean, right? So, in that respect, even like this, where we have a space where we give the topic some air, and it's not just to bemoan it and go away, but I think what I can do is continue to show up and be developing my own truth, be comfortable with who I am, be comfortable with how I show up without the vanity metrics, without, I mean, apart from a little bit of nice lighting, but I don't
It shines off
airbrush
the
or,
top of your head just perfectly, Steve.
yeah, a little shine, little gleam there. I do clean up the beard before I come online. So that's
I've
that's
got
just
another. I was told this is my first
Mhm.
time growing out the beard, and my research says I need to wait 3 to 5 months before I decide to give up. So I'm at maybe month 1, and it's pretty patchy. So we'll
Let-
see. I actually went into the whole researching beard oil. I think it's mostly a scam, so I'm just gonna stick to I don't know. Do you put shampoo or conditioner in yours, or do you just
No,
leave
and
it?
it's funny that there's a beard balm that you can put in that just kind of aligns the growth a little bit.
Okay.
So, but all we went off on a topic on a tangent there. But I think for me, creating a refuge, it feels like an uphill battle, because there's, for like you said, for every one of us, there are thousands that are in that other space. And then people go, well, who do I care? But I think I had this discussion with someone about polarizing thoughts. You know, when we have things that are very polarizing, what it does is people get entrenched in their position. And I'm not
Yeah.
just talking politics, but just in terms of anything that has got a very binary thinking or polarizing mindset to it. And what happens is you get entrenched in your position, one at north, one at south, and then the middle becomes a waste ground. Nothing happens in the middle because everyone's so pulled
A
to
dead
the
man's
poles.
land.
And what happens is it becomes harder to hear the other side, because you're so entrenched in that position. And we're losing the ability to hold two disagreeing thoughts in our head. We're finding it hard to see the other side. We're finding it hard to articulate our side to the other side. We can articulate it amongst our clique, because we don't have to say much to our clique to convince them, but to actually speak to another party in terms of understanding their position. So all that to say, having this sort of space where someone who is struggling, who hears this or comes across this, even in our networks, and thinks, you know what, there is a way to do it with real people. If I want to climb a mountain, find a person who's really climbed a mountain. And heck, they don't have to be the person that has got to the top of the mountain. Find someone, you're at the ground, find someone who's gone to the first base camp or the second base camp, because that's as real as you need it to be. You don't need someone at the top of the mountain saying, hey, come up here, because there may have been 15 base camps along the way. You need to get to the next one and find someone in that circle that not just wants you to be like them. Again, something Paul said, it's not about you becoming them as the mountain climber. It's about you finding the climber in you to climb the mountain. Right?
Steve, you've inspired me. I'm going back to Japan, and I do plan on climbing Mount Fuji. I'm going to do it on a Wednesday, and I'm going to restream from the top of the mountain. Paul, by then you'll be back in Hawaii, correct? So you go to the top of a mountain. Steve, you find a mountain in the west side of Britain, and in Prince William, you find a mountain, and we'll all restream from the top of a mountain. And that's just my idea.
Well, okay. Well,
That's my brilliant idea number one. My
we'll have to
brilliant
get
idea number two
Starlink.
is you mentioned the no man's land that we create, like World War II reference there. What I need to do is I need to date all of these Black female rappers who are being really crude, and I need to turn them into good, godly women through my charm, and then send them back out into the world as rappers who promote good stuff. So that is my new mission, is to date all these people who are putting bad images out there and turn them into good people through my charm.
You got to get through special forces training first.
Yeah. Hey, I was out there thinking of you yesterday, Steve. I was spend more of my time thinking about you than women. It's kind of scary. I was out there pushing my dog in the stroller with the weighted vest for an hour straight around a lake, and I was like, I wonder what Steve Wright's doing right now. That's literally what I said to myself. I was like, and if I send him a video of me pushing this stroller with the weights, it's gonna take him a week to 3 weeks to see it and then do his jump roping in response. So I was like, do I send it and hope that he maybe sees it right now? Or is the delay time, at least he'll still jump rope in the future? But
Dude, we can turn one of these Wednesdays into a workout if you really want to.
Workout
If
Wednesday.
you really want to turn,
Justin's
if you really
on
want to
his
turn the algorithm,
treadmill, you're
the
jump
LinkedIn
roping.
algorithm up on its head. Four guys, a twerking workout. Oh my goodness.
Let's work
Anyway,
out.
I won't go to Paul Princewell. What are
Steve,
your
could you
thoughts on?
demonstrate right now what that would look like?
No.
How to twerk?
Steve, I think while I was listening the whole time, one of the things that I talk about all the time, and you and I have talked about this before, is like people focus so much on the pieces instead of the overall picture. Like everything that I've heard talked about is like the little pieces, but the overall picture is that people aren't thinking and trusting for themselves. Like people are so outraged about all these things, but it's been around for like decades. Like it's not new things, but and I think like I was talking about this with my 82-year-old client that I work with who is healthier than like most people my age at 82, and she's just like, people tend to focus so much on repairing things versus prevention, right? And it's like the thing that's so interesting about these conversations is that you have like this huge disconnect because one side doesn't understand the other side. I was just on a conversation with somebody who lives in Thailand who's like almost 70, and she and I were talking about life and all these things, and we're like on the same wavelength. But the only reason why that works is because I understand why she thinks the way that it is. One of the most powerful things that I learned, and this is like the ultimate de-escalating question, is asking people like, I'm curious why you think that way. So many people get upset and they allow their thoughts to control their actions instead of going back to that emotional regulation and allowing their actions to control their thoughts. I've had like some of the craziest experiences on events where people have said like the craziest thing, and I just look at people and I'm like, I'm so curious, like, why do you think that way? That's an interesting take. And it's so funny. People will like take a step back and think, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know why I think that way. I think, Steve, you and I have shared this story about like, I grew up with my grandparents, and the two phrases that I heard all the time were, because I said so, and this is the way that we've always done things, right?
Yeah.
This is like something that you and
traditional
right.
parenting mantra.
Yeah, well, and I've talked to Steve about that in the military. It was like, because I wear an anchor with 2 stars, like my way is will, even if it was unjustified or not true,
What's funny though is like as you get older, you realize that phrase is a filler because they don't know any other way to do it and they don't know the answer. And I think like where a lot of advancement and a lot of breakthroughs can happen is when you have people becoming more curious than imposing like their judgment or their way on looking at things. And that's like one of the things that Steve and I was talking about earlier, how regardless on if you disagree with how people connect and experience to the world, that's kind of the beautiful part of humanity. And in a lot of those things, you can find those like silver linings and connections to connect with people and transcend a lot of these thoughts. So that's what I think.
That's beautiful. Princewell, what's your take on this? How can we stem the tide or bring positivity and light to things like this?
Yeah. So
especially in your neck of the woods. I'm always, uh, yeah. It's good. It's good to have representation from Africa in some of these spaces here. Um, you know, my first overseas experience was in Africa. Although my parents are Caribbean, and it threw a lot of people through a curve when I went to Zambia as a teenager, and people didn't understand why I was going to Zambia as a teenager. But so all that to say, I value your input just because you bring a different perspective.
yeah, thanks so much for that. Please. Yeah. So for me, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, your audio is clipping a little bit, so it might be harder to people listening. They may find it a bit harder to, but see if you
Is it
can. Is it coming? Is your microphone on your headset, or do you have another microphone source?
better on my headset?
Okay, it may be the noise cancelling or something. It clips a little bit.
Oh, is it better now?
Marginally, but if you speak loud, and then maybe we'll just have to shout.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So for me, I think mine is basically one of the ways people can learn from you is from your action. And I've tried helping a lot of people from my previous school, my school I graduated from. Yeah, it's been a hell. I can't lie. So most of the times, I'm not really where I want to be in my life. So most of the times when I try helping people, it's like they are dragging me down instead of me picking them up. Yet, so there's a classmate I had once that I wanted to assist because I see him as a person that was going through the wrong path, which was going joining calls and all of that, with your fellow people and all of that. So I was just trying to be there for him, assist him, and try to guide him on how he can gain his skill and start supporting himself and his family. So I wouldn't say he went well because while trying to help him, nurturing him and guiding him on a lot of things, and it went really bad because he had done a lot of bad things with people and they are always looking for him. So it's like I was in the middle of what I don't know, what he has done and why they are coming for him. So in the process of that, it's like I was putting a risk trying to help somebody grow. At the same time, it's trying down to what I don't know he's doing. So it was very difficult. So most of the time, I had to distance myself from him for my own safety and all of that. So most of the times, I feel like they are going to learn from your action, and if they can't learn from your action, they don't want to change. So if my action alone can make you come closer, and if I have to come to you, it means I cannot help you because there must be something you're doing that I don't know that might affect me because I'm not really where I want to be in my life yet. So it's a problem for me because I cannot help everybody because I am still growing. I am still looking for a way to find my path. I am still it's difficult for me. So most of the times I just feel like you can learn from my actions if I am passing a message to you, or you can learn from my steps. That's it.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna paraphrase some of what you said because it was clippy, but I've seen some of that aspect within certainly in sort of my time in Jamaica in terms of there is sometimes we can talk from an assumption that the person who needs help knows they need help and is maybe not engaged in things that are destructive in order to get help, or we're in a position whereby we have bandwidth or resources to help so that when we look back to teach, we're coming from a place where we are equipped to teach. And you may find yourself I've seen that as well, whereby you want to do well and somebody shows up in your network or in your environment or even in your family or social circle, and they are a positive drain. They've not got themselves to a place where they can even use the help that you could offer. And being discerning in terms of where you are at in order to help somebody else is really important. So it's a valid point, because you can end up becoming the victim of that person's misdemeanors or their issues, something
Well, you
that
know
they're
what it
doing
says
now.
in the New Testament? It says, hold each other accountable in temptation, lest you yourself fall into temptation. So part of that is like when you're helping other people, make sure that you're not taking advantage of, or that you don't fall into what they're doing. Which I think, is especially important for all my people in addiction recovery, holding other people accountable in their addiction. If you're trying to stop them from drinking, now you're surrounded by the very same thing that you're tempted by. So I think it's important. Or if
Mm.
it's any kind of old habit you've had, you know, um, I think it's so important for when we're helping people to not, one, put ourselves in danger or temptation, but two, also not be taken advantage of either, and kind of waste our time and efforts. Or the best way I heard it, because I used to spend a lot of time with people like this, I kept getting told, Mr. Whiskey, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, and I've been in that position a lot, trying to help someone. And Nathan Buttigieg, he's one of my favorite people. He's a guy who was on my show doing coke and alcohol every day. He just, boom, quit, became jacked at the gym, and that's his life now. And he puts out a lot of mindset stuff. And he said, instead of trying to change them to live a better life, you just have to show them the better life they could live. Because I had a gym partner that just like, I was really trying to help out, and he just chose to continually stay stuck where he was. And I realized I was trying to change him instead of showing him how to change, if that makes sense. But it's easy for us when we've gone through stuff and have learned the progress to want to teach others it. But sometimes I guess we kind of force it onto others who aren't ready for it yet, or maybe don't want to. And we, but I've always had that tendency. Even some of us here maybe relate to, like, in middle school or high school or whatever they call it in other countries, like you're part of a group project and you're kind of the smartest person or the lead, and you end up doing the whole project for everyone instead of having them contribute. I've done that plenty of times.
You carry the weight. Something that Paul said in terms of the question, the curiosity, being curious rather than imposing, that in itself opens up a lot more avenues for communication, because the curiosity, for me, the curiosity informs discernment. If I ask someone, why do you think that way, and they can't articulate it, they haven't thought about why they think that way. Something either that can show that they've been, something's been injected into them or imbued into them through their surroundings. They've heard someone else say it, but it's not really their belief. So just even coming from a position of curiosity rather than imposing a different belief or idea on them, just like the idea that they've got right now that they don't really believe in, like asking for that curiosity and asking for them to articulate it brings in the discernment. It allows me to understand if I can really help, because if they can't articulate the challenge, then it makes it harder for anyone to help them with that challenge if they can't articulate it. And I may be offering a solution or an example, and if they're not in the position, the headspace, or the ability to take it on board, then they're not going to do so. So coming from a position of curiosity is key. Making sure you're safe. That, to Prince Roy's point, in terms of sometimes you can inadvertently find yourself in difficult situations by association, because you're there trying to help, and all of a sudden you become affiliated with something that was not your intention. So it's important to make sure that there is an element of safety there. But I think, just like I said, step at a time, one rung at a time. You can't think about the top of the ladder until you've taken the first few steps on it. And that's all we can do. And just trust that we can do it. And trust that the social media can be social. It can actually work. In many places, it does actually work. sometimes the algorithm fights against us and presents things in a skewed way, in a polarizing way, even because they have an agenda too.
Yeah.
It's a business. That's why it's free.
Yeah, well, you're paying. It's like you said, but you pay with your time, your attention, your energy. You know, Steve, like, and this is probably like a good way to kind of end this, and maybe it's like food for thought for the next episode. But like earlier, you and I were talking about like finding, kind of like figuring out how to bridge the gap between like knowing and doing, right? And I I've been watching this podcast daily, by a mentor and somebody who's become really close to me, and he also happens to be like one of the top performance coaches in the world. His name is Ben Newman, and it's called The Burn. And in it, they were talking about how connection is essentially, performance is all about figuring out how to activate people, right? Because everybody has like the little button to push, that what makes them tick. You know, how do you get people to move the needle and take action and all these different things? And I was thinking about it. Connection is essentially an activator, right? That's why like you can hear something a bajillion times, and then you hear it from one person that maybe like explains it a little bit differently to where it kind of strikes a chord, right? And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the vulnerability that people are sharing like transform, because storytelling and connection becomes so powerful because other people can see themselves in pieces of your story, and it creates that instant connection even though you have no idea who people are. And I think that's where the curiosity comes in, because when you ask people like why they do or think the way that they do, number one, it gets them to think. But a lot of times when people answer that question, it gives you a new perspective in terms of why people do and think that way. And then you're able to elaborate and really kind of find the middle ground, because a lot of people don't ever get to the middle because they're so blinded by their perception instead of being illuminated by perspective. That's why I think travel is just one of the greatest teachers. And when you get to experience the world from somebody else's shoes, that's why I love the coffee chats and conversations, is you get to understand why people think the way that they do. And it's a really beautiful thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, and if you want connection, ladies and gentlemen, the Restream drop-in event for the one-to-one thing every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the time being, because I don't know British time. This is the place. And if you want to feel that private connection with Steve and his guests, the One-to-One Thing podcast, available on most platforms where you get your podcasts.
And also, I would like to mention this guy here, I've been a guest on his show, couple of nukes, and he always gives me a shout out on my one, and I feel like, oh, but Mr. Whiskey's an accomplished author. He runs an awesome podcast.
I'm a best-selling author, but to Paul's point, I don't worry about that.
A veteran. He's a veteran, God-fearing man. He owns the cutest little dog that is right there. Oh, there you go. My rating's just gone up now.
I do gotta say though, on the connection aspect, everyone listening, if you've ever been a part of, Steve Wright's drop-in event, he and I have been talking, planning something big, the water cooler cruise. And everyone who has been on the show is invited to join us on the cruise ship. Steve and I are going to be Captain Whiskey and Captain Wright. And we are going to be arranging a time and a date where we all get on a cruise. We do the one-on-one thing in person. We go on some port calls, the water cooler cruise. Steve and I have been discussing it starting right now when I told him my grand idea for the first time. But ladies and gentlemen, the water cooler cruise, I'm telling you, it's going to happen one day. Probably not this year, but 2026, maybe. That gives Steve like 2 or 3 12-week
12
years
week
to plan
years to
for
get
it.
it done. To get it done. Actually, let me finish on that very same thought. There is I'm if you've been following me for any length of time, I've been documenting weekly, been posting weekly on a Monday or maybe a Tuesday or a couple of times, my journey
Week
through the
9, the
12 week year process. And I started in January, so the 12 week years kind of coincide with quarters of the year. So this is week 9, my September of year 3 of the 12 week year. And I run a sort of a calendar year in terms of weeks, so
He's
12
officially
weeks.
63.
And then 1 week is a review week of that year to start the next year with a bang. The nice thing about this has been that feedback I've got from the cohort that joined in year 3 has been that it's been a great accountability check-in tool. It's periodization, and people talk about agile and sprints, and they have lots of analogies in terms of how you can sort of condense time. But in actuality, it just makes it gives me a chance to have 4 Januaries, 4 opportunities to restart. It gives me 4 Novembers, which are periods of Thanksgiving. It gives me 4 summers, the time of the year to reflect and harvest on what's
And it's
going on.
September for you right now.
It's September for me right now.
Happy birthday for the 3rd time this year. You're officially
I don't celebrate my birthdays in the 12 week year because I'd be old.
Well, we have a biblical term for that I like to use as someone who's a theologist, which is advanced in years is how we call it in the
Advanced in years.
Bible. No, my wife is advanced in years.
Mm.
Too old to give birth. But yeah, happy birthday, Steve. I guess you've
coming up.
left Yayoi in the dust in terms of now you're 3 years older than her, but if that happens.
There you go. So, but the new cohort is starting at it will start in the end of, it's 3.5, 4 weeks from now. It will start at the end of September. So I'll probably be posting a little bit about that as a great way to connect outside of this, and just much more structured and much more focused. It's a great cohort that we've had.
And then
in
you're
year
going to be on a
3.
couple of nukes at the end of the 4th year to talk about your 1 year of 4 years.
My 1 year of 4 years, my 1 year of 12 week years. Yes, I would love to come back. I'd love to come back on your show.
I'm very
bro.
curious at the end, how much more or less productive it made you and all stuff like that, and how you felt. And of course, the big question, are you going to do it again?
Yes, it'll
we'll
be year
see.
5. It'll be year 5 in January. I'll just continue the numbers as opposed to going back to, I won't follow the quarters. It'll be how many times I've done it. And this is an evaluation of the 12 week year. And I think someone said, you really have to go through, someone says 7, 10, 100 iterations of something before you can really evaluate it, depending on what it is. For me, I have to do at least 7 12 week years before I can really evaluate what it's about. It's unfair for me to just do it for 12 weeks and think, can't be bothered. Read the book, done, dusted. I've not given it enough.
On that note, I have an interesting idea.
But I was going to say, as I'm looking at Paul, something came to mind. Yeah, because Paul was talking about the understanding the micro and the macro, and I think what the 12 week year allows me to do in periodization is think of things in much smaller chunks. The week is like my month, and therefore there's a bit more of a focus in terms of what happens each day. Whether it makes you more productive or not, whether you still have the dynamics of time, things take their time. If it takes a week, it takes a week. So there's things like that. But certainly the micro focus to a macro result definitely helps in that respect. On that note, I'm going to call time, because I don't like to go more than an hour's nice. An hour and a half is really pushing. Especially I want to repurpose or share some of this good content here. But Paul, been a pleasure. Always fun. Mr. Whiskey has to go. Thank you. Always fair winds and calm seas. I love that. So nautical.
Yeah.
Fair winds and calm sea. I'm going to finish my calls with that. I don't sail, so the pull is wasted on me. It's lost on me, but I get it. Thank you for that sentiment. Good luck with I hope it goes well for your neighbor. Prince Will, it's always a pleasure, bro. I'm glad you're able to get alternative power to keep connected and stay in the call. And for those watching on replay, check in with any of us. We're all on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And do your homework. Go look up one of those rappers I named. Check out the lyrics to their song. Do a little book review assignment and let us know. Hop on the call next week and let us know what you think. Maybe even according to my sources, Steve Wright will actually be singing a few lyrics for us next time for us to really do on the spot analysis. If he sings, I'll twerk, and if I sing, he'll twerk. So we'll do a coin flip or something.
You're just trying to up the ratings for the call next week.
Trying to get more.
That's not the way I like to invite people to this call. But still, I won't be singing and he won't be twerking. But
no, I'll actually be
rich conversation.
I don't know if I'll be here next Wednesday because I have just a week and a few days until the Special Forces Challenge, and it's grind time. I'm going to Virginia Beach. I leave tomorrow morning, 8-hour drive, and I'm excited for Steve Wright's gonna get his phone blown up with a lot of pictures of me shirtless climbing a rope on the beach, 50 feet. I may wear a shirt depending how I feel. I don't know if I shared last time, but I went for a shirtless run with my weighted vest the other day, and I did chafe the left side of my body on one specific part, and I'm now wearing clothes with the weighted vest from now on. So
yes, yeah, I learned that lesson of chafing in a marathon run.
But if you want to see shirtless Steve Wright jump rope videos, Saul Wright coaching on Instagram, go check it out right now.
I'm not shirtless when I jump ropes. Just to burst that clickbait bubble.
All right, Steve.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been great. Prince Will, Paul, Mr. Whiskey, real pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day.